There are sign-in sheets going around the tables, so if you want to sign in, if you want to give us your email address, we will follow up with you, send you the notes from this meeting, that kind of thing. And it would be good for us just to know who was here, other than I'm sure Dawn was typing ridiculously fast trying to get people's names. So we are taking notes tonight. We will share those out with you. Now, I'm just going to give you the answers to the staff quiz, and then we will get started. Just so you know, you can actually go on the church website and see if I can do this. Open it up. Oh, that didn't work. Okay. Anyway, you can go on the church website and see photos of all of the staff, almost all of them, and click on there and get their email address as well as their phone number. So that is on the church website. But let me just run down through the list for you so that you know who is who. So I'll go in the order that they are on here because my order is slightly different. Joyce Barksdale. Joyce keeps everyone accountable. Woody Brown does his best work when he throws his hands in the air. You guys can mimic any of this stuff, all of you who are here. Andrea Chardarowski burns more calories on a Sunday than most of us do in a week. Someone should get that girl some roller skates. And she's over there with the kids right now. Megan Del Grosso, our youth director. Megan can point you to the Fountain of Youth. You may have seen her in Another Christmas Story on her toes, in her toe shoes. Chubb Dietz is loud. No, the answer to that one is he balances the numbers in black and white, but you can find him somewhere over the Rainbow Christian Missions. Okay, Mark Golden, our communications manager. Mark actually has 2 answers on this sheet just to mess you guys up. So if you notice, there's one more answer that you didn't probably use. So Mark is either the master of signs or in charge of the Spirit Squad, Spirit as in our newsletter. Robin, my thing is in the wrong order. Robin cares for more children than the old woman in the shoe and remembers all of their names. Robin is in charge of our ICEC and all of the teachers there as well. Margie Martinelli. Margie has her finger on the pulse of the church. Okay, our wellness coordinator. Let's see, Dawn McGann. Dawn keeps worship organized. I did not write these, just saying. Chloe Moser. Chloe is up on the rooftop like old St. Nick, then down in the basement, lickety-split. So Norma Moser keeps peace in the kingdom. So if you've ever been in that church office, she's the calming force. Erica Oshlick, her voice and her heart are bigger than her body. She's a small person. Zach makes sure the word is heard. Thank you, Zach, for the microphones. And often beats it into us. Get it? Ba-boom, boom. Okay. Jamie Petrick. Jamie is a jack of all trades. Carol Sabrine spends more time on the phone than a teenage girl. You will often get her when you call the church office. Dick Rostek, I can set you up. Dick is setting up our lots of our rooms and facilities. Sarah Strickland understands the calming properties of goldfish crackers and fruit snacks. Sarah runs our nursery. And then Pastor Jim. Oh, I skipped David. I'm sorry, David. David rules the roost. And Pastor Jim is our relief pitcher. I skipped Diane. I'm sorry, Diane. See, we're so glad she came on the scene. She's our nature-loving, say it with me, preacher from Queens. So the staff actually worked on putting this together, but we thought it would be good for you guys to just kind of get a sense of who the staff is and what they do. And honestly, they do an awesome job, and they've done an awesome job this year, in particular in our, just kind of a strange year for us with David having been out for so many months.
Now another welcome to everybody. This is very exciting to see so many of you out there. Leadership is we're really thrilled to see so many here this evening. And we're going to open with a word of prayer, so I'd ask you to bow your heads and pray with me. Dear Lord, we come to you with such gratitude. It's hard to even put into words. You have blessed this church family beyond belief. We have a great staff, beautiful buildings, grounds, so many dedicated volunteers, meaningful programs, talented choirs, curious children searching for your word. This list, we can just go on and on. But we come humbly this evening asking for your guidance. We so want to be the church you plan for us to be. We want to be your hands and feet. May we be filled with the knowledge of your will for us. We know that for some reason, speaking of money issues in church can be awkward. As we speak of missions and concerns outside our church, please remind us that this church, even this building, is also a part of our mission. We need to be strong in our church home and faithful stewards of this church. For in this strength, we can serve you in a bolder way, spreading the good news outside these immediate walls. Forgive us, Lord, when we put our wants first and forget to be your faithful servants. We want to live for Jesus. As Pastor Tubbs preached several weeks ago, more of you, less of us. Dear Lord, please strengthen us in the Spirit this evening so that Jesus dwells in our hearts and we are rooted in the love of Christ. In all this we pray in Jesus' name, amen. And all the people said,
Amen.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jan. So I'm going to have Roland Burnett come up and just kind of talk you through some of the things that have been happening here. Oh, you want to bring that up?
Good evening. My name is Roland Burnett, and as I said earlier, I'm currently serving as the lay leader here at Ingomar. In order to discuss tonight in 2013, we want to drop back a little bit further in history. I came onto the Finance Committee in 2007, 2008. Church finances at that time were very tight and had been for a number of years. Almost all capital projects had been delayed. Some estate planning gifts came in. Latent projects in dire need were caught up on. Our church mortgage was reduced, saving our church money every year going forward. Some staff turnover was experienced for a variety of different reasons. A revised staffing model was built and led by Pastor David, who has a doctorate in ministry degree with concentration in church organizational leadership. Staff parish diligently filled the positions, with most of the openings having as many as 25 or more applicants. Results are we have some of the finest and most invested we have some of the finest and most invested in our church's development staff members I have seen. Some of the results are we have expanding youth ministry led by Megan, who was so invested in its development she went door to door to invite and re-invite youth to attend. Our church children's ministries are on the upswing. Our 10 o'clock service is well led and has been well developed by Erica. In fact, our church worship services have been well led and have continued hardly missing a beat in David's absence, as have our ministries, programs, and outreaches. In fact, one of the legacies David left us before becoming ill was a strong staff and leadership committee structure that have allowed our church to move forward in his absence. Over the years, I have served on stewardship as well. Different types of stewardship campaigns have been completed. Pledges have gone up and down with those campaigns, but giving generally has remained pretty much in a 1% with a maximum of 2% increase per year over those years. This year, our leadership team took a different approach to the pledge campaign. Instead of asking for pledges as traditional, we gave the gift of financial education for all who wish to receive it. Along with that, the gift of education concerning planning and considering our own legacies was also offered. My summary point is that we've now reached somewhat of a crossroads. To sustain our church's missions, programs, and facilities, and to treat our personnel well in 2014, it will require a larger amount of revenue to be raised in 2014 and beyond. Ingomar Church has a rich 175-year history of changing lives and impacting the community and the world. This happened again in 2013. Many of us individually and our families have been positively impacted by the things that have taken place and continue to take place here at Ingomar Church. As we talk about 2013 in review and 2014, that is our theme.
Well, good evening. Again, I'm Keith Colonna, and I am on Leadership Council here at Ingomar, and I'm also chairman of the Finance Committee. And this is the portion of the conversation tonight where we talk about the church finances for the year and where we finished up last year briefly, and really a bit about the budget for this year and some things we wanted to bring to your attention off of leadership and finance both. You've already heard from Roland and others that in 2013 we did a lot of things to try to position for growth and improve the church by filling staff vacancies. We worked hard as leadership and as staff to improve programming and enhance that and expand what we were doing here. And we also did many things last year that were intended to continue to improve our facilities, upgrade them, repair them, and so forth. I know the longest serving or longest standing members here remember well the days when there were buckets in the narthex and so forth when the roof was leaking and the repairs weren't getting done. Many of those things have been accomplished over the past several years, and more of those continued in 2013. But there's been an impact on our budget as a result of all of that. As Roland mentioned, several years ago, the church was blessed to receive a pretty large bequest from an estate that provided a large influx of funds that was used for several years to help do many of these projects. It helped replace a roof. It helped do other capital projects and maintenance and repair items that needed done around the church. And what has been happening for the past 2 years is that leadership and finance together have agreed to spend some of those surplus reserves to accomplish those projects that needed to be done. But we also set in place a floor. For those of you who have done any kind of financial planning, for those of you who are veterans of Financial Peace University, you know about something called an emergency fund. And we have always operated with this reserve money also with that viewpoint that we want to keep a reserve floor of monies that we don't want to fall below. And we have pretty much approached that floor. We'll talk about that actual dollar amount in a minute, but we're pretty much there. So the impact of this is that for 2014, as we have continued to expand staff and program and fill out our vacancies, as inflation has impacted us as well, our operating expenses have increased. While at the same time, 2013 giving, our contributions were basically flat. We had contributions actually decline just slightly, just under 0.5%. Ingomar Child Enrichment Center, our preschool program, ICEC income fell nearly 6%, and that's not related to our giving here, but it's related to the demographics of preschools in the area. And again, we closed this deficit. We had a budget deficit last year on an operating basis. That was closed by using these reserves. So here's a table of history of budget numbers going back to 2009. And what you can see in this last column is that we had $625,000 in surplus money, reserve money, in 2009. It actually grew to $690 in 10 and grew again to $751 by 11. But then we started to dip into those reserves in 2012 and 13. So you'll see that we went from $751,000 to $559. And then from 2012 to 2013, we dropped to $408. Our total revenue, this includes everything. This is all giving and ICEC, missions and everything, $2.15 million last year. Total expenses last year, including capital projects, $2.4 million. So we exceeded total spending exceeded total revenue for the year, which is why this reserve balance fell. And so graphically, this is the one. If there's one picture you walk away from, this is the one that really paints the picture. We have had rising expenses. This is operating expenses, the large green area. That's staff. That's keeping the lights on and all of that. We've had mortgage expenses as we've done the renovations across the street. We need to work on paying those down. Capital projects and improvements for the facilities are always there. But here's the surplus money we talked about, and here's this emergency reserves floor. Finance and leadership have agreed for several years that our floor should be $350,000. And where does that number come from? That number is basically roughly 3 months of our operating expenses. So we want to keep at least 3 months operating expenses on hand in the event of an emergency or unexpected events like the flood we just had across the street, which insurance will help with, but undoubtedly we'll still end up having to spend money somewhere as a result of that flood. So this floor is a dollar number we really don't want to go below, and this is where we are. Our reserve funds are right at that floor while expenses continue to rise. Some of the major things that have impacted reserves, I already mentioned, the 2007 roof replacement. In 2012, we refinanced our mortgage, and made an additional principal payment that reduced our overall funding costs of our financing for our work across the street, but it also then reduced some of our reserve balance. And then in 2013, things you may not even be aware about, but we did infant and toddler room remodeling. We installed a security system for the ICEC program. We also had some concrete and drainage repairs just outside here as well to try to help with the flooding problems that have happened in this building. So we have spent significant capital to address some maintenance issues as well. So as I said, we're now close to our $350,000 minimum. That's about 3 months of operating expenses. There's no extra surplus to spend in 2014. So I became chairman of Finance Committee, and this was not an easy past 6 months on finance and leadership to make these decisions. But the decisions we made were that we had to implement broad expense cuts because we weren't going to deliver a budget for 14 that was not in balance. We can't spend what we don't have. So our budget for the coming year includes expense cuts virtually across all categories, and that's really expense cuts to programming and resources available to our staff. We made an assumption that giving will increase 4 to 5%, which is about where inflation is, or slightly above that, but it's an aggressive assumption. As you heard Roland already mention, our annual giving has only risen about 1% annually since 2009. So giving has not kept up with inflation, but we had to make some assumptions on budget and then made the decision to come talk to the whole church and discuss where we are with that budget. This is an example of some of the cuts that are being made for 2014. This is not all-inclusive, it's just some highlights. But merit increases for our staff will be delayed until middle of the year, until we see what our year is shaping up to look like. We're going to reduce service contract values for things like HVAC, which will take about $7,000 out of our planned spending. We're going to do things like eliminating weed killer and fertilizer for the grass, which, believe it or not, saves about $5,000. We would like to do some repairs on these partitions in here. Those are going to be delayed. We're going to reduce or eliminate some carpet cleaning and floor stripping and waxing. That'll save around $15,000 on the year. We're planning to, for the time being, not repair any lighting that requires a powered man lift to come in and take care of that. That was about $3,100, I think, last year alone. Reducing advertising, mailings, and children and family ministry postcards. Cutting weekly devotion bookmarks. Asking small group leaders to help cover the costs of some of their leadership materials. And there's also a potential impact here on missions giving as well. So virtually every category across the budget will be impacted in the coming year in order to keep our budget in balance. So how does this look graphically? Just to summarize things, we're projecting, again, 4 to 5% increase in offering and giving for the year. We're projecting ICEC to probably stay flat on giving on revenue versus expenses and basically operate at break even. Missions designated and other income and expenses roughly similar to 2013. And then budgeted expenses. You'll see here we do have expenses planned for 2014 for staff. We would like to give staff a 3% salary increase this year. ICEC expenses, again, projected to come roughly in line with 2013 expenses. But you'll see here large expense reductions for trustees' facilities, some expense reduction for missions, a pretty significant expense cut for capital expenditures for our buildings and grounds. We have a planned increase in apportionment. That's our commitment to the conference, United Methodist Conference. And then trustees' utilities, that's the lights and natural gas and so forth. We really can't control and change that. But you will see a couple of categories up here pretty heavily impacted. So to summarize, it's going to be a tighter year for expenses at this point. We want to do a better job of communicating on a monthly basis where we are on budget. In the course of the past couple of years, we've had, I think, every other week or twice a month, a very small summary table in the weekly bulletin that was accurate, but it reflected all missions giving. It didn't reflect correctly the operating nature of our budget and the fact that we are actually running close to or at a deficit on an operating basis. So Finance Committee, and a lot of credit I have to give to Chubb Dietz, we worked hard the last couple of months of 2013 to revise how that's reported to you, and I think there's a stack of these that we'll hand out tonight. This will be prepared monthly, and you'll get this, we'll have this at the information tables in a narthex. We may put it perhaps in the mail room where the mail slots are. And this will be something that gives you an operational overview. It's basically going to be income and expenses, a summary of our capital projects, reserve fund review, where we stand on the mortgage, and where mission giving is on the year. So this will be something prepared monthly. We hope it gives a much more accurate and up-to-date picture of where we stand, and that it's something you can use as a guide to our finances on an ongoing basis. So with that, I'm going to turn things over to Russ, and Russ is going to talk to us about trustees and facilities and grounds. Yeah.
Forward. Down arrow. Okay. All right, thank you. Good evening, I'm Russ Gibson, and I'm the chairman of the trustees. Does anybody think it's cold in here? No? A couple people, yeah, a couple of nods. That's those doggone trustees, they won't turn up the heat. Well, trustees are directly impacted by the cuts in our budget, and trustees have two areas, operational areas, where we spend money on the church's facilities. One is in the facilities itself. That's all the cleaning, the upkeep of the buildings. The second area is in the utilities. And as Keith mentioned, we can't control the utility costs unless we turn down the heat. So Chloe, crank it down a little more, would you please? But where we're seeing a dramatic decrease is in what we call the facilities budget. And there you can see that last year we had a budget of $237,000 to maintain the grounds. This includes Camp Davis, all of our campus here, plus the Camp Davis facility. And you can see how we've structured our budget for 2014, a decrease of $41,000. Where the impact is hitting is in building cleaning and in the service contracts. That would be the grass cutting, the snow plowing, the service contracts for our elevators, our heating system, etc. And also in the technology end, which is all of our computers, our servers. So those costs, we're going to have to squeeze every last dollar we can to bring our facilities cost in under $196,000. That's the bad news. Good news is we've already saved $2,000 on our insurance premium. Trustees were able to negotiate a better insurance program this year, so the insurance number, instead of being $17,000, is $15,000, and that's done. So there you go. We're already $2,000 ahead. The other good news is there are certainly opportunities to make up some of the shortfall, and there's two ways to do it. One is through the volunteer efforts, getting more people involved in volunteering. You can do this individually, you can volunteer as a family, or your small group can volunteer. And over the past years, we've had a number of small groups step up and say, how can we help? Give us a project, something that our small group can do, as part of their fellowship and their service and mission for our church. So this is just a sampling of some of the things that we do need volunteers to do. And believe me, we have a whole long list. So if you're good at painting and scraping, waterproofing, if you're willing to spread fertilizer on the lawn, one time in the spring, get somebody else to do it in the fall. These things will help us because we've cut these services out of our budget. We're not paying a contractor or a service company anymore to do these things. That's where the reduction of $41,000 is coming from. If you're willing as a small group to meet on a Saturday morning and wax the floors in this building, Chloe and the trustees will get you loaded up with the supplies and the machine and show you how to use it, and you can make a party out of it. So consider that. In fact, I'll just give you one example. We have two very large air handling units up in the ceiling of the narthex upstairs. They're in the ceiling. Each air handling unit is about the size of a very small car. Consider one of those little Fiat cars. That's about how big each of these units is. So it's a big unit. It sits up in the ceiling, and it's very difficult to get to. But once the heating contractor, maintenance man would get up there, they had to be maintained. These air handling units push the warm air into the sanctuary for heat, and they push the cold air in for air conditioning. So they have to be maintained. Well, the heating contractor said, no more. We're not going up there anymore until you get a secure floor, some kind of platform for our serviceman to stand on. Because as it was built, once the serviceman got up there, he was standing on metal studs, and if he missed or lost his balance, his foot could go right through the drywall ceiling. There was nothing else holding him or securing him. So to hire a contractor to make that repair or that improvement would have cost us about $8,000. Volunteers of our church last summer, we rented a man lift, and the volunteers accomplished that task for $719. So less than 10% of what it would have cost for us to pay someone else. So these volunteer opportunities, are there, and they're a way for the church to get things accomplished and save money doing it. So if you're handy, even if you're not handy, volunteer, and we'll show you how to do it. The other way for us to overcome the shortfall of these budgeted funds are through the building improvement idea that the trustees and leadership has launched this year. You're all familiar with this brochure. These are just some of the donations that have been given to date under this program. Computers, $2,000. We have six remaining classrooms in the education building that have never been air conditioned. And 8 or 9 months out of the year, it's not a problem. But it restricts our ability to have vacation summer school, vacation Bible school in the summer, and other programs when it's just too warm to use those classrooms. So $4,000 was donated, and this spring those rooms will be equipped with air conditioners. So all 16 classrooms in our building here will now have air conditioning when needed. You can see someone felt passionate enough about having benches in the Grove, and $1,000 was donated for new benches, and $500 for a peace column, for restoring the peace column, which is out where the rose bushes are. So these are examples of extravagant generosity. People who said, I'm willing to help, I'm willing to make a donation, where can it be used? Now, just to show you a couple pictures of what the trustees have been doing in some of the capital budget areas. This classroom on the top left and the bottom left, that's what the classrooms look like. That building, the education building, was built in 1964, so it's now 50 years old. And other than some paint, these rooms still look the same way they looked in 1964. Some of the oldest members of our church might still remember that. The pictures on the right are pictures of the newly remodeled nursery, that's the nursery room, and the toddler room, which is right behind it, has the same improvement. Now, it's an expensive improvement, but 50 years later, we have to update our facilities. ICEC alone, they're in competition. We are in competition for preschoolers in this area. We're not the only preschool in the North Hills. We have to continue to upgrade our facilities. You'll notice that the bathrooms in this building have all been upgraded in the last 3 or 4 years. The central lobby was upgraded 3 years ago. This is a good start. We have drywall on the walls, new ceiling, new lighting, new cabinets, new sinks, new tile floor, ceramic tile floor, and carpet, as opposed to the old linoleum tile, which is also 50 years old. So these are things we want to continue to do to our facilities, but we have to manage our money wisely, and that's part of the reason why, as a church, we need to think about greater giving. Last picture that I have is showing some pictures of the security system. This was a $35,000 investment for our church in 2013. We really, as a result of Newtown, we really did not have a choice. Families bring their young children in to preschool and to daycare, and they expect the building to be secure. And so we have that now with a keyless entry, cameras, and so forth. But it was a $35,000 expense. So it just gives you an idea of, what some of the costs are to not only maintain our building, our facilities, but also to upgrade them, keep them modern. Thank you.
Thanks. So as you can see, we've come a long way. We've built some things up, and we have a lot of opportunities for 2014. A lot of opportunities to help us reach our vision, our mission to develop in these 5 practices. Russ outlined a few opportunities as he talked with facilities, some ways that people can either donate financially or donate your time. I'm going to offer a few more in just a couple of other key areas. One is in children, family, and youth ministries. We had an amazing number of baptisms here this year, and those kids just keep coming. There's a whole bunch of them here earlier tonight. It's a wonderful thing, and we've got to keep those kids educating, which is another reason that we want to keep those facilities that the kids are using in shape. So just a couple of things you can do. You can apply for your clearances. All the people who are upstairs tonight have their clearances. So it's a $20 thing. You fill out a piece of paper that just says, I'm okay, and I can work with these kids. It's part of our safe sanctuary thing. Leading or assisting in Sunday school, ideally you could commit to once a month. Once a month, make a relationship with the kids, one Sunday a month. Chaperone an overnight event, or drive for an off-site service project for our youth groups. Prepare lunch, or set up facilities, or prepare crafts. If you don't want to work with the kids hands-on, or that doesn't fit in your schedule, there are things that you can do at home to help our children and family and youth ministries. And the other is to take a nursery shift for a Sunday or a special event like this. And serving at Ingomar. So we have missions and service, and some of the services can be done here in the church, and some outside of the church. So one of the opportunities is to have the congregation assist more with some of the behind-the-scenes work. And another one would be to reinvigorate some of our welcoming practices. So some ways we could do that. You could volunteer to set up communion. That happens the first Sunday of every month. It's a matter of getting the fruit and the juice, and Jamie would show you how to do that. Lead a team that eyeballs our environment. Look around at things. Pick out the things that need to be repaired. Those are the kinds of things that are welcoming and hospitable for people. Scheduling weekly greeters so that we have them in the door, or be a part of a parking lot greeter program that Jamie and I unofficially started last Sunday as people were slipping on the ice. So, I think that there are lots of things that you guys can do. Serving outside of our walls, again, there are opportunities coming up. There'll be a missions fair here this spring to show you some of the ways that you can get involved. You can get involved in local service, emergency response, foreign mission trips. You can collect things that are being donated, go on a mission trip, or support someone else's. Help to identify local needs, or lead a response to things that are coming up as emergencies. The lists go on and on. I just wanted to put a few things up there. There are ways that every person here, every single one of us, can get involved in some way. And so the challenge for the coming year is that we need to give more and we need to serve more. And I don't think that's something that even all of the people in this room, just us, we all need to do it. But everyone in this church needs to do it, and consider what personally God is putting on your heart. And when I say prayerfully, when I got up on Sunday and asked you to prayerfully consider coming here, I was praying for all of you to come, and I think you were praying about being here, and that's why you're here. And I want you to go home tonight and I want you to pray more. And I want you to ask God what he wants from you. Because you've been hearing from our pastors this month. You heard from Pastor Jim and you heard from Pastor Diane that God's calling us to do stuff. God's calling us to be less of us and more of him. God's calling us to be his hands and his feet and his mouth in the world. And so whatever that means for you, whether that means you can increase your pledging, whether that means you can increase your time here, whether that means you can increase both in some way, and I'm willing to bet that all of us can, I want you to prayerfully consider that and figure out what that means for you and for your family. And then I think that God's going to answer those prayers in ways we cannot imagine. We can't even envision them. We know he wants to change lives through us. We know that he is changing lives through us. But he can do so much more if we just let him. So with that, I would just like you to take a couple of minutes here. And we are going to have some time for questions and answers. But I'd just like you to take a couple of minutes just to silently reflect on what God might be putting on your heart tonight. Dear God, we want to thank you for this opportunity that we can come together as a family in your name, that we can come together and share good news and share the hard news, but really share as a family like families do, that we just help figure things out. And so, God, as we move forward in this meeting and we have some time to share ideas and thoughts, I pray, God, that you just fill us with your Holy Spirit and with your love. In Jesus' name, amen. So we do have a number of handouts for you, a couple of handouts. One is kind of a takeaway sheet that hopefully recaps some of the things we talked about tonight. And one is the operating budget overview that Keith referred to. So we'll get you all of those. We also have some of the promise cards that we passed out in November. And these, as you remember, we didn't have pledge cards. We asked everyone to make a promise between themselves and God. And this has a place where you can talk about your money and your time and your abilities and how you want to return them. And I would encourage you, if you didn't fill one of these out, or maybe if you did and you can't find it, to take another one and fill it out and put it someplace that you're going to see it every day. On your fridge, on your bathroom mirror, in your Bible, on your car steering wheel, whatever that might be. So we have these things for you. But before we do that, or as we pass those out, we're going to take some opportunity for you guys to ask questions. What I'd really like to know is, you all are here. How do we get the word out to other people? What are the ideas for sharing this kind of information? How much of it is worth sharing, and what of it did you think was gravy? That's good to know. And Ryan's going to take some notes up here. And then if you have thoughts about things that you want us to talk about further, we'd like to do another one of these meetings in the spring and another one in the fall. So if you have ideas about things that you want to explore that you think would be good to get involved in, or ideas of ways that you want to serve that you just want to share with others, Ryan will capture all of that, and Dawn will capture that in the notes as well. So we have mics. So anybody, if you guys can start to pass these out, and then Jan, Kathy, would you be the mic runner? So if you have a question or a comment, would you just raise your hand, and Kathy will come over and bring the mic to you? There's one. Yeah, I think, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Janet Rokel.
Hi, Janet.
And, we've got a $2 million budget. And I think that as a church, we're asking people to give more, give more, give more, and yet we continue to cut our missions budget. And I really think that is absolutely the wrong place. I don't like the fact that our mission committee has to raise their own money. I mean, I think it's good, but I do think that we're giving just over 1% of our money designated for missions. And, I just think that's a real sad thing for a church. You're
Do you
there's
have
a
a
lot of people
suggestion?
serving. There's a lot of people serving.
Yeah.
I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
But I think that a church who can't give, it's not 10%. It's like 1.5%. It's not even 1.5%. I think that says something about the church itself and their importance in missions. So I'm not sure what to do, but this has been...
So maybe a suggestion would be that we could, and we do have a missions committee, but maybe there's a way that we could talk a little bit more about what we're giving to missions and try to put our arms around that in some way.
Absolutely. I think
and just
think
continue
it's a
to talk about it.
something that's a priority.
Okay. Thanks. Anybody else? Don't be shy. You're going to go home and go, oh, I should have asked that. There's one.
I can talk loud enough. I'm Keith Russ.
Oh, yeah, we'll get you.
If we ran into our problem maybe in the third quarter, I'm very disappointed that we didn't get a third quarter giving statement, because I would have known then that I was $1,000 short, and I could have made up the difference. If we had to come up with X number of dollars, I think that next year in 2014 we should get a quarterly statement every quarter or more often, so that we have the opportunity to know if we're short. My numbers look like we were about $159,000 short this year. Is that correct?
In giving?
No.
Overall giving or
Overall
on the
giving was
budget?
about $45,000 less than last year at 4.4%, right? But the shortfall that you identified, I think, is about $159,000 that's coming from reserves. I, for one, extremely disappointed if we ever go below that 350. We've got to find a way to build that back up. Don't go below that 350. If it was over $700,000, how many of you people participated in the financial piece? You guys know what the first thing was. You got to have an emergency fund, and you get rid of your debt. We got to find a way to stop spending so much money.
Okay. So we've got a suggestion for quarterly statements and just to continue to watch expenses. Yeah. Thank you, Keith. Come on, don't be shy. Someone, there's one. Oh, okay. Renee has one back there.
This is kind of a follow-up to Janet's comment about missions. We give a lot to the conference. Is that kind of part of our missions giving? What
Yes.
is that considered?
Actually, if you look at the bottom of that monthly statement that came around, we do about 20%, Chubb, of our apportionment is designated toward missions. So, right, the conference allocates an apportionment to every church, which we do pay, and about 20% of that goes to mission projects. And then that mission summary that you see on the bottom is what comes in, what the church provides, as well as what comes in through missions offerings. Mm-hmm. So that's a summary of everything there.
I just was confused how
We're actually a very,
that money.
And I don't want to go into a lot of detail there, but I do think we need to have a conversation because you are all very generous in giving to specific missions when we have mission focuses and all of that kind of stuff. And that, if you put that together with what comes out of the operating budget, it is way more than 10%. But what comes out of the operating budget is not 10%, and that's what Janet's point was. So we need to figure out how we talk about that and how we balance that. Yes, Colleen.
You were asking about ways of getting the word out to other
Yes.
people in the church, and I just had a thought, like possibly focusing on one area each month. sort of like highlighting, children ministry right now, of course, is important to me, and I know I've seen the slides in church about the need for ICEC volunteers, which is great, but maybe even including, a cool video or somebody coming up and speaking each month. And I think also it might be helpful for people to understand the dollar savings. I know like IC or the children's ministry, maybe not the dollar savings, but I thought that was very interesting to find out about the money that was saved by the drywall that was installed in the ceiling.
Right.
I think if people had a better understanding of how they can serve and how that can save money, even if
Okay.
they're not able to increase their giving, they're still helping the church save money.
Yes.
So just, by focusing on maybe a different area each month and putting a dollar amount on the volunteering
Okay.
might draw awareness.
Okay, good. There's one up here. Oh, two.
Hi. Yeah, we moved here 2 years ago from a large Methodist church in Texas, and every church there has a preschool. And making the investment of $35,000 for a security system is amazing. Very few other preschools in this area have that. I would really suggest a volunteer-led connection committee between the preschool and the church, because we should be seeing a profit of an increase of payment, depending on what the
Enrollments or enrollment fees.
In our previous church, we had a committee that connected the volunteers from the church, the babies that are being baptized, making sure that all those families are aware that they're funneling into the preschool, and making sure that then we don't lose them, and then they can continue on to the childhood, into the kindergarten and those programs there.
That's
great. And that's all volunteer led. It's from letting church.
Would you be willing to
Yeah.
just talk about how that worked there? Because I
I'd
think
be happy
that would be a great idea.
Yep, I'd be happy to.
Thank you.
Yep.
It was a volunteer connection committee between the child care and the church. And can we put your name by that? Is that okay? And tell me your name, first name, Melissa? Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, I just have one other question. I was just looking at this list of example service opportunities, and it just occurred to me, okay, these are some ideas, but I bet there might be others.
Lots.
I mean, like maybe it might be helpful to sort of generate a list, or like every month just put a list of sort of new ideas for them in the bulletin or something. I mean, maybe some of us aren't clever enough to think up our own ideas.
Sure. So monthly share new ideas for service opportunities. Because you're right, that is a tiny list, and there's a huge list. The other thing that you can always do is call our volunteer coordinator, Jamie Petrick, and Jamie will even talk you through, well, do you like to stuff envelopes? Because today we need someone to stuff envelopes. And she will be happy to talk you through that. And we do have a database that we keep of people who are, anytime you need someone to stuff an envelope, just give me a call, So, but I think it's a great idea for us to maybe put a few of those more interesting needs and urgent needs out there every month. So, great.
I was very interested in the question about missions, and I'm looking at the data that you handed out, and I don't understand it. In the operational overview for 2013, we have a mission giving overview, and if I'm reading it correctly, it totals about 275,000. Either that or 202,000, I can't quite tell. And of that, one very small portion is the stuff that comes from the operational budget.
Right.
Which is all that we were talking about.
That's what Janet was saying. The amount that comes from the operation budget, she was saying, is about 1% of our operating budget, not 10%.
Okay.
And that was her concern. What I was also saying is there's all of that other money that's in there that isn't from the operating budget.
Right.
Right.
So do we as a church recognize that our offering is going more toward the operating budget, and that we give to our missions as we designate things? I mean, I just
Right.
want to understand the approach that we take, because I think that seems to be the way it's coming out here in the month.
I think that,
data.
yeah, I think that maybe what I'm hearing as a sort of a suggestion or a next step would be to clarify where envelope offering giving goes in relationship to missions. Would that help? Because if you put your offering in your monthly envelope and you give that, it goes to the general operating budget and is then allocated out.
And I actually do think of things like Sunday school and the youth group and so on as missions.
Right.
I think it's a big concern if my kids don't have a place to go for church. But
Yeah, so this is why I think a really good discussion, because it is, is what we do. I mean, you might argue that everything the church does is a mission.
right, but
This dinner is a mission.
but it's an interesting question, and I was very glad to see that there's a designation here of a broader scope of what we do for mission.
Thank you. We will keep trying to work on trying to educate and communicate about missions more. What other suggestions? Are there other things that if we do this again in April or May and again in the fall, obviously missions is a topic that requires more discussion. Are there other things you guys want to have discussion about or be a part of a discussion about? It's not even 8 o'clock yet. Any other questions or comments? John has one.
Captive audience and a microphone. I have to take advantage of that. One of the things that I think that stands out to me is as we watch our reserves dwindle, and as Keith was saying, we're at that bottom level. I think we all need to get involved with how are we going to change this direction. It's leadership council, it's staff that has to do it, but I think we all individually have a vested interest in making this turn around.
Yeah.
So that we can effectively fund missions, we can effectively fund our child and enrichment center. It's not up to just individuals, it's up to each one of us to step forward and be part of that.
So it would be maybe to capture on Ryan's, just to really for us to talk more about how we're going to change and what we're going to change in order to
we need to get a plan.
Move forward.
We need to get a plan and implement the plan, because if we continue the path that we've gone for the last 10, 15 years, we're going to be into a death spiral. And then
that's one of the reasons we're having this meeting.
Exactly. So, we have to take a vested interest individually to make it different, or we will continue down the same path.
That's great. Thank you. There's one.
Dan Media. I really appreciate the meeting. I appreciate the fact that we're, really communicating clearly that we need to watch the money right now. So I appreciate that a lot. The one thing that's missing for me is the priorities. Mm-hmm. We've gone from waxing floors to, doing the lawn, and, what are the important things we need to do? And certainly you've listed some of those as things to do, but it doesn't seem to tie into our budget issue here. And what are the priorities we need to put in place so that first monies need to go here? Second, as we get better, these are the areas we want to put more money into quicker than others. So that prioritization is missing.
So I think that just having us sit down and maybe be more clear about putting some of those things into priority order, in particular the ways that you can help and the ways that we could use more money would be helpful. The financial priorities. Okay. Good. There's one behind you, Bob. Bob is the person behind you.
Yeah, Bob Boyd. I was just wondering, You talk about 350 as the
Floor?
the floor, the point that we don't go below. Have we, in part of this process, do we have an objective to raise that cushion to a certain level to get it back to 700 or to get it to 650, or is that something that's been discussed?
Yeah, actually, Russ alluded to the capital brochure, but earlier in the year of 2013, we also sent out something about an endowment fund. And so there are definitely things that our committees have been talking about ways to raise funds that aren't designated for operating but are actually designated for the reserve. That reserve came from a bequest. So people who want to leave behind a bequest or designate something out of their IRA or all of those kinds of things, planned giving type of options are available, and that is something that we've talked about improving. So, I'm guessing, you know, I mean, again, the suggestion here is to continue to look at ways we can build up that 350 reserve so that we have more money to use for other things. Here's one over here.
Bob McCartney. I would observe that the reserve fund is only one way to protect the institution. I was on the finance committee when a decision was made to use funds to pay down the mortgage. If we were to have a modest effort to get people to give extra to pay down the mortgage, you would be giving and creating the equivalent of reserve.
So an effort to pay down the mortgage, which is another way to not use up the reserve and free up funds. Yeah.
What's the current interest rate on our mortgage?
Chubb, current interest rate on our mortgage, actually, Carl probably remembers. Do you remember? 6? About 6%. We just refinanced it in 2012.
This question is just out of curiosity. I watch those reserve numbers go up and down, and I'm just wondering, do we actually have an allocation model for those reserve funds, or is it sitting in cash? Do we review the rates of return on those funds if there's something other than sitting in cash? How sensitive are they to market fluctuations if we have a model that is either weighted on equity side or on fixed income? Just what's happening there?
Yes, we do watch it, and we can go into a little more detail, but it's not cash.
Okay,
it's invested.
Because if we have an allocation model and there are earnings on those funds, not only are we spending the earnings on that money, at the same time we're drawing down on principal, which further exacerbates the situation. Because now we're not either reinvesting earnings, we're taking them out, and it makes for a very difficult situation to build those without a cash infusion.
So we do have an investment policy statement. So what I would do is refer you to Keith, who can talk to you. There's actually a subcommittee of finance that actually looks at those allocations. And so if you wanted to understand a little bit more about what we're doing there, but I think the point that you're making.
Yeah, I don't necessarily have to get down in the weeds with it, but I was just wondering, do we have an asset allocation model that is working? And if it is working, then my concern further was that not only is principal being depleted, but the earnings on that.
That the earnings would be depleted as well, and that is a concern. Could you just mark that a concern about the interest and earnings of the reserve fund being depleted? Thanks, Pete.